Taylor Swift is living every woman's biggest nightmare. A barrage of deepfake graphic content has proliferated like wildfire over Twitter. I refuse to call it X because I don't acknowledge Elon Musk's contributions to this world. In response to her attendance at a football game, some loser-nothing men decided to literally exact revenge on their loss by creating these deepfakes and sharing them widely. Taylor is, of course, deeply upset and disturbed by this happening to her, as she should be. It's unconscionable, and no one deserves that. This was a coordinated effort that was fueled and facilitated by Twitter's abysmal content moderation system. There are a couple of pieces to examine here when we're discussing this issue and how to stop it from happening again. First and foremost is regulation. This is something we, the public, have very little control over, as most social platforms are private enterprises that do not answer to external parties, and the mechanisms for holding them accountable simply are not iterating fast enough to regulate an ever-evolving, constantly innovative field like generative AI, nor have they been able to properly hold social media platforms accountable in their nearly 2 decades long of existence. And content moderation is an extremely hot topic as of late, and I think that fans and fan communities really need to reconsider the platforms they're using to conduct their support of their faves. By engaging on Twitter, you are supporting it and helping the company generate revenue. This is basically only going to make this issue worse. You will notice that although the content does spread elsewhere in the cesspools, for example, of 4chan and Reddit, the other main social platforms that are extremely visible to the average internet user, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, Facebook, have much more robust moderation tools. Not that they're perfect, but they are more ready and able to take this kind of graphic content down more effectively and efficiently. So this video is going to focus on how this happened to Taylor Swift in the first place, and also talk about what we can do to stop it. And spoiler alert, mass reporting the content on Twitter is a bit of an ineffectual way to actually stop this from happening in the long run. Twitter does not have the infrastructure as a company to even respond to these mass reports punctually, hence the original photo being up for 17 hours. So a longer term solution simply must be considered if you truly want this kind of appalling behavior to stop. Before we get into this video, I'm going to be talking very analytically about this issue, but I do want to talk about the emotional damage and toll that this must have taken on Taylor Swift, and also to young women who are living their lives online, as most people are. The co-host of my podcast, Evolution of a Snake, Madeline, is a wonderful writer who shared a really eloquent description of these events and what they mean to other people, and I'd like to share it with you. She said, "Make no mistake, those images of Taylor were created as revenge to get back at her for ruining a football game. It was created to dehumanize, humiliate, and demoralize her. It was created to show her legions of fans, who are predominantly young women and girls, that it doesn't matter how rich, powerful, white, and famous you may be. If you are a woman, your body is not your own, and it can be taken and controlled for men's enjoyment." If you're new to my channel, my name is Zach. I'm the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos about pop culture. Usually we're having a kiki and a fun time, but today is a serious video topic and something that I am looking forward to delving into a little bit more. One of my kind of side interests and passions that I haven't really found a place to discuss online yet is kind of a more meta media and social media, internet digital culture analysis. I follow a lot of different reporters that are doing really important work on this in this space, and I will link all of the sources that I use to construct my argument in the description box. I would particularly like to shout out Casey Newton, who is the editor-in-chief of Platformer, an incredible independent tech publication, and Kat Tenbarge, who reports for NBC and has done significant work on deepfakes and how they particularly impact young women. As I said, I will link them all below, and they are excellent resources if you're interested in more in-depth reporting on this topic. In this video, I'm going to discuss the platforms, content moderation, and the generative AI tools themselves and the legislation around it all to explore this issue. Unfortunately, this is not Taylor's first brush with this kind of activity. She was depicted nude in Kanye West's repulsive music video for Famous, which you will notice is still available for viewing on YouTube. We as a fandom called this out extensively at the time, and I've also talked about this a lot on my podcast, The Evolution of a Snake, but I don't think that any of those concerns were ever heard. And Taylor was actually a victim of deepfakes in the Fearless era. This is way before any of the kind of generative AI nonsense started happening, but someone was photoshopping her face onto nude images when I think she was either still a minor or had just stopped being a minor. And the difference between then and now is that the AI tools are able to generate this kind of content much more easily than having to physically manufacture it on Photoshop. And I know that this has been profoundly damaging to Taylor and has impacted her relationship with the public. I remember there was an interview where she said that she was even nervous to change clothes when she was trying on stuff in a store because of her paranoia around being photographed. And that paranoia is honestly not even paranoia at this point. People are waiting to get an opportunity to do something like this to her, and if they can't get an actual image of her, they'll just create one instead. The revenge porn legislation in general is quite nascent, and it has only really been legislated in the last 10 years or so, and deep fake legislation is another issue altogether, and there is certainly not enough legislation surrounding that, but I will get into the specifics of that a little bit later on. So what happened, and how did this happen? Here is a summary from The Verge. This is one of my favorite tech publications. One of the most prominent examples of this graphic content attracted more than 45 million views, 24,000 reposts, and hundreds of thousands of likes and bookmarks before the verified user who shared the images had their account suspended for violating platform policy. The post was live on the platform for 17 hours prior to its removal. But as users began to discuss the viral post, the images began to spread and were reposted across other accounts. Many still remain up, and a deluge of new graphic fakes have since appeared. In some regions, the term Taylor Swift AI became featured as a trending topic, promoting the images to an even wider audience. According to an investigation by 404 Media, this content was created on a Telegram group where a bunch of loser incels used Microsoft Designer, which is an AI graphic design tool that can create images from whatever prompt you give to it. So you could say, give me a picture of a cat wearing a bandana, looking cute at a birthday party, and get that image, and it would look very realistic. Or you could do something more sinister with that capability. The pros of generative AI tools is that they are, genuinely groundbreaking, super creative. They simplify workflows for people who need to create digital art a lot. The cons are, well, they're so good and so readily accessible that it's unbelievably easy for just about anyone to create images that should not exist. Taylor isn't the only example of these tools being abused or used for malice. Generative AI tools have spread election misinformation and allowed bogus companies to have fake celebrity endorsements using voice tools. It's a whole mess. But basically, what we've learned from history is that you can't really stop the flow of innovation once it gets started. There's so much money in the generative AI space, and the regulation is really not catching up fast enough. Instead, what happens is that you're constantly playing catch up with the capabilities of the technology while trying to regulate it in real time. And this is an extremely slow process with bureaucratic governments that are not designed to respond to issues that evolve this quickly. So who can respond quickly, you may be wondering? Social media platforms, aka the venues by which this content spreads in the first place. Twitter has policies for synthetic and manipulated media, as well as non-consensual nudity, that explicitly bans this kind of content from being hosted on the platform, which may make you wonder, how the hell did these images manage to get 45 million views then? When Elon Musk took over Twitter, he decimated their trust and safety team that had been built to being something pretty robust over the years that Twitter had existed. He literally fired most of the people who do the content policy creation and the content moderation, meaning that their capacity to actually examine the reports of content violations instead of just algorithmically responding to reports has been greatly diminished. And this has been truly catastrophic for their bottom line. Advertisers do not want to spend money on a platform where this happens. I mean, think about it. If you're Diet Coke, do you really want to be spending your ad dollars to have your product appear alongside an AI-generated graphic image of Taylor Swift? No, that's bad for business. And this has also been catastrophic for users and for the people who are targeted by abusive language and content on this website. Because Twitter has always been a bit of a hellacious place, it is not surprising that when you even dial back the content moderation a little bit, it truly becomes something that is unstomachable. Because the infrastructure of content moderation at Twitter has been gutted, it doesn't really matter how much mass reporting or organizing you do to try and get this content off the platform. At the end of the day, they don't care enough about use term violations to effectively respond to them, nor do they even have the capacity to respond to them in any sort of effective timeline. I mean, look how long it took them to take down a picture of Taylor Swift. I have witnessed this myself. Over the years, I've experienced a lot of abuse on Twitter. It's the nature of being a content creator. But I found that before Elon took over, the reporting process was a lot more straightforward, and it seemed like obvious violations like slurs and manipulated nudity and misinformation were more effectively identified and squashed. They were also more prone to suspending and banning IP addresses from being able to continue this behavior under different aliases. This is not so now. Users are getting more opportunities to violate the terms of service and then continue posting content on the platform, even under the accounts where the violations were identified in the first place. As a person on the receiving end of this kind of abuse, I can tell you that accounts who threaten to dox me, tell me to KMS, nuke and swap my house, physically harm me, and constantly deride me with blatant homophobic slurs were reported, had their tweets taken down, but were allowed to keep violating the terms of service over and over again. This is on a very small scale, so imagine what it's like for someone that is incredibly famous and has hateful or abusive content about them spreading 10 times as fast. The question we really need to be asking ourselves here is, why are we still using Twitter? I think the negative impulses of certain fan bases have flourished with Elon's takeover of Twitter. They are more readily able to do the things that drive their engagement, the pile-ons, the mass organized harassment, sending threats to their perceived enemies. There is definitely a selective outrage going on here from a certain subset of fan community that are demanding Twitter to remove all these images and wondering how they were able to stay up in the first place. The exact features that keep you on that platform engaging in your own term violation behavior is the exact reason why this content has spread so far in the first place. There is not sufficient content moderation mechanisms in place to prevent abusive behavior from happening. That's kind of period, dot, the summation of how this happened. Twitter only survives because people are still using it. It's a sinking ship. The advertisers are gone. Elon is way over leveraged in his investment in that company that will soon be non-profitable if events like this keep happening. The best way to effectively end the use of deepfakes and to take a stance against people behaving like this on the internet is to stop engaging with the platform entirely. This has already happened. You may have noticed that many journalists have fled the platform en masse and instead headed for platforms like Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Threads to keep doing their work and building community in a safe space without supporting the continuation of this, honestly, this societal evil and root cause of so much misinformation and online abuse and harassment. I was taking a break from Twitter this week because of the harassment I received for saying Taylor doesn't deserve to win Album of the Year. And after learning about what's taken place with this AI deepfake nonsense and really understanding more fully after doing my research on how this happened and why it spread, I have decided to completely get off the platform entirely. I encourage you to do the same if you want to prevent stuff like this from happening to Taylor Swift and to other public figures as well. This also can always happen to you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this kind of content moderation or lack thereof means for the average person in just a little bit. But you will notice that celebrities don't even really interact on Twitter anymore because it's quite literally not a safe place for anyone who has any sizable amount of people with a vested interest in seeing them harmed. Mass reporting the content and posting videos of Taylor performing to bury the pictures is absolutely a good temporary stopgap, but it will not fix this problem. It treats the symptom, not the disease. Eventually, the platforms who are spreading this content have stepped in somewhat to remove some of it. Imagine how this kind of abuse plays out for people who do not have millions of people sending mass reports and posting other content to bury the abusive content on their behalf. Kat Tenbarge has done some amazing reporting on deepfakes and the culture of cyberstalking and mass harassment. I really recommend looking into her work to learn more. In a report for NBC News, she uncovered that Google and Bing, our primary search engines, are allowing deepfake pornography content to appear in the top search results under famous women's names. Google is not proactively looking for deepfakes or trying to delist them in the search results either. So while yes, you can file a request to have something taken down, if you don't personally see the content, there's a very good chance that it will just exist without your knowledge, and Google will do nothing to identify that content and remove the content itself. So this technology, this AI generative technology, is being used, of course, outside of celebrities. When we encounter a celebrity deepfake nude, we're more likely to consider it to be a fake. So how might we respond when it's a normal person who is not famous? This can be extraordinarily damaging for young women and has already begun to impact minors. High school boys are creating deepfakes of their classmates and disseminating them widely. There was a very controversial story about this from New Jersey. On noted cesspool 4chan, deepfake creators are watching live feeds of courtrooms and making deepfakes of women on the witness stand. They're also taking requests and selling creations through their own websites. This problem is so much more widespread than we realize. It goes so much further than Taylor Swift, and it's only primed to get worse with platforms like Twitter operating the way that they do. Women have always been disproportionately attacked online, so of course they are really bearing the brunt of this new sick and twisted kind of abuse. Minors and teens are especially vulnerable in this circumstance. So what kind of implication does this have for the law? Because, literally creating sexually graphic images of a minor, even if they're fake, is wrong. How do we then regulate this content when it's based on someone's likeness and there's no real person depicted? Because, an AI generated image is an amalgamation of different images that technically creates something unique. But does the distinction between the real person and the person who is being cloned and depicted in the AI image even matter when the effect and the intent is the same? It's a dehumanization of women who have not given their consent to be depicted in such a way. But going back to Twitter for a second, there's a lot of explicit content on Twitter anyway. By that I mean consensually posted explicit content. It is one of the only platforms that has, really allowed NSFW content to exist in this specific way alongside their native and organic content, and has been made pretty easy to find. Because AI generative art has become so good at creating these deepfakes, it can be really difficult to differentiate the fake adult content from the real adult content, which I think further blurs the line between consensual adult content and AI generated harassment, especially when there are no strong policies or a robust, well-equipped enforcement team in place to prevent this from happening or to be proactive about catching it before it spreads. And again, Elon Musk has absolutely no interest in making Twitter a safer place. He is basically a free speech absolutist. Everything comes back to freedom of speech. And when you're dogmatic about that, algorithmically, content like AI generated deepfakes tends to thrive. So how do we get justice? Well, you can't really. In the US, at least, there's no federal law regarding this, and only about 10 states have actually followed through with deepfake legislation. The off ramp to dealing with this collectively as a society is really to stop using Twitter. They are currently being investigated by the EU, who are much better at regulating social media platforms, for disseminating illegal content and disinformation, specifically due to misinformation that is being spread during the Israel and Hamas war. The platform abuses that we're talking about here are serious, and they have far-reaching consequences. Elon Musk has expressed time and time again that he has no interest in strengthening content moderation efforts. In fact, his whole interference with Twitter to begin with was based around gutting that specific part of it in the first place. The most effective way to stop this content from spreading is to stop feeding the mouth that is spewing it. What can we do in the meantime? Report everything that you see, I guess. Unfortunately, that really does almost nothing. The most powerful collective action you can take is to simply stop using Twitter en masse. And if you really think about it, Twitter needs fan bases and fan accounts and fan communities a lot more than we need them. Given that their advertising dollars are down and the attrition rate of normal users is high, the only really super hyperactive people on Twitter are fan communities. And the Swifties, I'm sure, drive a huge portion of their traffic, and their traffic is basically the only thing they have left that could make them even slightly profitable. And I think perhaps a boycott is in order. And boycotting works, especially when the target of your boycott is not financially resilient, and Twitter certainly is not financially resilient at the moment. Why are boycotts good? Well, they directly target the financial bottom line of whatever organization you're boycotting. By refusing to purchase products or use services, so by refusing to tweet, basically, boycotters can decrease the revenue of the target. If their traffic goes down, they can't sell as many ads, prompting a reconsideration of the policies or the actions that led to the boycott in the first place. They also attract immediate attention by raising awareness about the issues that are being protested. They also demonstrate solidarity and the power of collective action. When a big group of people unite for a shared cause, it highlights the strength of the community and also of our shared values. This solidarity can be really empowering for participants and also very persuasive to onlookers who maybe haven't gotten involved yet. And it can eventually lead to permanent changes in consumer behavior. Long and persistent boycotts can make other products or platforms appear, and it can disincentivize those new products and platforms from emerging with a model similar to what Twitter is being boycotted for. They're also really effective in the digital age, and social media platforms are super globalized. So what happens on Twitter impacts all of our conversations around the world. It's not like a nation-specific issue. In the long run, and for a healthier internet at large, we really need to look at introducing pro-social norms on social media. We cannot rely on external parties to regulate our interactions with one another. It's kind of weirdly paternalistic anyways. We need to be cognizant of how we interact online and hold each other accountable to a set of norms. I'm not perfect at this. I'm sure there's been instances in which I have not followed the pro-social norms that I would like to follow for myself, but I'm certainly trying to make a commitment to be better about this and to lead by example. It's very difficult when other people don't want to participate in those pro-social norms with you, but I really do want to try. So New Public, which is a group of designers, thinkers, and architects who are invested in creating a healthier internet, frequently advocate for more pro-social norms in digital spaces. And why do we want to have more pro-social norms? Because we need a standard of conduct that we hold each other to in order to live peacefully and coexist nicely. Norms are not just explicit rules or community guidelines. They're also implicit principles that guide members' understanding of acceptable behavior in a group, formed by their own experiences and observations. Cultivating shared norms is very crucial to the health and success of a community online. Highly visible deviant behavior and unpunished norm violations, lack of support for positive behavior, and incompatible private behaviors can all lead to misperceptions about group norms. And these misperceptions can in turn cause antisocial behavior, of which we see a lot on Twitter, and a hesitancy to embrace the pro-social norms or a reluctance to interact online at all. So New Public said that there are all sorts of norms, but they're especially interested in norms that promote pro-social behavior, and they describe these as acts that are generally beneficial to other people. For online groups, pro-social behavior includes virtual help or generosity, positive interactions, and most importantly, counteracting toxic behavior. New Public posits that there are three essential components of pro-social behavior online: visibility, reinforcement, and intervention. Visible behavior in online communities is really crucial for norm development and maintenance. The issue that we have with the way that platforms are currently set up is they are designed to reward antisocial behaviors. They often get more visibility due to engagement-based ranking, and they tend to influence our group norms negatively, aka normalizing the antisocial behavior. Ephemeral content also, like Snapchat, Instagram stories, being less permanently visible also leads to less accountability and more rapidly changing or absent norms. So it becomes harder to define what's acceptable and what's not when we can't see half of the content that is taking place to begin with. By the way, New Public kind of developed these guidelines for developers and for people who are involved in actually building spaces on the internet, which is why they might seem a little bit more technical. But some of their recommendations include making pro-social behaviors more visible, so using both explicit rules and reminders and implicit signals like engagement and upranking in combination with features to hide norm violations, content removal, and downranking in order to amplify amplify the pro-social norms and to de-escalate the antisocial behavior. The other thing they mentioned that is very important is reinforcement. So positive reinforcement of pro-social behavior is essential. People are influenced by seeing others engage in pro-social actions and are much more likely to follow norms when they know their actions are being observed by supportive peers. Then, of course, we have intervention, which is about corrective actions that are necessary when norms are violated, because if there aren't corrective actions, norms risk being transformed or abandoned altogether, as they completely have at this point in our journey on social media. So there are a variety of intervention types. There are social corrections, so like emoji reactions, direct sanctions like bans and timeouts, and also you can decrease visibility of violations, deleting comments or suppressing stuff in the algorithm. This part has always been something I've found hard to understand about trying to change pro-social norms on the internet, but in order to stop the antisocial behavior from happening, we have to emphasize rehabilitation and education over punishment, because that generally leads to more positive outcomes overall. Not all norm violators are intentionally disruptive. Many simply misunderstand the norms. I think that's a very generous interpretation of what is currently going on the internet, but you know, I want to keep an open mind here. So that was just a little bit of food for thought on how the internet can hopefully evolve to become better in the future. I think at the end of the day, what's important is that we reassess our relationship to social media and what the intent behind spreading information is. And obviously, we all need to think more critically about the media we consume. We need to second guess everything that you see online, especially on Twitter. You literally can't trust any piece of information that you read on that website. But I think that at the end of the day, if you truly are invested in this kind of stuff not happening to Taylor Swift and to other young women in the world, and to other people online that also don't want to experience abuse and harassment, we all need to kind of collectively reimagine what kind of norms we're willing to accept. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that it was a little bit educational for you. I hope that it made you think a little bit. And I will see you in my Sunday video where I will be talking about SZA's amazing record, SOS. Okay, goodbye.